Okay, a question that I actually get asked a lot is, will the NFL ever have a team in London? Now, in 2007, we'll go back to the beginning, is when the first game was played at Wembley by the NFL. So they've been playing here now for 11 years in London. And I'll talk about the issues later, and that includes fan base. Why London? Why not just a UK-based franchise that may move around several stadiums? And there's a lot of issues with that. Now, the NFL has come out and released a report saying by 2025 it aims to have a team in London. It also aims to have at least 6 million avid fans. The issue with that is you've got 32 teams. So the fan base question, which is down here, comes up. We'll get to that in a minute. So they aim to have 6 million fans and have a team in London by 2025. But how do you go about that? You relocate a team or expansion team? And from what I'm gathering, and from what I've read, I read a lot of articles whilst researching this video, the NFL League is happy with 32 teams, so expansion is less likely. You get more money for it, for owners getting expansion fees, but it's less likely to happen. So relocation would have to be what is, considered. And there's only 3 teams that people would consider for relocation. Jacksonville, their owner, so he can't try to buy Wembley. He owns Fulham here in the UK. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Glazer family own Man United here in the UK in our English Premier League. And the Buffalo Bills. But the Buffalo Bills always pack out their stadium no matter how crap the team is. It's just a Buffalo thing where it doesn't matter how poor their professional teams are, they regularly support their teams because they are loyal. So Buffalo is the least likely. Tampa and Jacksonville are terrible teams. I'm not going to lie. They are terrible. Their records, if you look at their season on records, apart from Jacksonville last year getting to the playoffs, they have been mediocre at best. So if you are wanting to grow it here, you want to have a successful team. But there's another issue with that. All 31 teams have real avid support here in the UK. All 32 teams, sorry. So if you move one of these 3 teams and plonk them in London, that's 31 fan bases you've just turned off, who will have no interest. Absolutely none. And suddenly that 6 million avid fans might reduce to about 60,000 nationwide for a team. 100,000 nationwide for that team. Not just in London, nationwide. So they are taking a very big risk with relocating a team because they could turn off a lot of fans very, very quickly. In that London series, which seems so special, where every team gets to play, I think there's only 2 teams that haven't played yet in London. Suddenly feels less special when you've got to see this same team for 8 regular season weekends, and you only get to see possibly 6 other teams because you've got conference rivalries, or 4 other teams in the conference, and maybe 6 teams in total. That's not going to interest the other 31 fan bases. That's an issue that the NFL is going to have to consider. How many of those avid fans are going to support Jacksonville or Tampa if they were to relocate one of those 2 teams? Because Oakland are going to Vegas, the Chargers and the Rams are both going to LA. So all the teams that were considered to be relocated have now relocated. So the only other teams that we can think of are those 3. And Buffalo ain't moving. Tampa and Jacksonville, they can't even draw fans in Jacksonville and Tampa. They can't even fill their own stadiums now. So what does that do for a London team? Considering that their regular season records all time are crap. They are literally crap teams. I'm not being harsh to them. They are terrible. So what do you do? So you bring a failing franchise from America that can't draw in its own city that it's been based in for, I think, like 2 decades for Jacksonville, Tampa, about a similar amount of time. Plonk them in London and expect suddenly fans to turn up. It doesn't work like that. But that's my view on it. Now, what stadium do they use? Now, Wembley has been regularly criticised as a stadium. It's a hot topic here in the UK. I'm not sure what American fans feel about it with the NFL, but Wembley as a stadium has been criticised by rugby league fans, rugby union fans, our football fans, soccer fans to the American market. It's been panned by a lot of fans. Yeah. White Hart Lane, the rebuild is a fiasco, so that's not even open yet, rebuilt. And that's meant to be hosting games this season. Yeah. Doesn't have a roof or working fire system, so I don't know how that's going to work. And Twickenham, I think, was the best stadium that hosted games, and it had a limited short-term contract with the NFL while Spurs were renting Wembley last season or the season before during their rebuild of White Hart Lane. So that's Tottenham Hotspur to Premier League fans from America. So there are 3 stadiums in London. There are other stadiums in London that are probably NFL sized. The Emirates, for example, at Arsenal. You've got the London City Stadium where West Ham play, the Olympic Stadium. There are other stadiums in London that are NFL sized. It's not just these 3, but these are the 3 that the NFL want to use. Now we get to the rest of the issues Okay, logistics. Every team that's played in the London series gets a bye week the week after. That's how they organise the bye weeks now. A little bit. It's affected the bye week, so the league scheduling as well. Where would the off-season training camp be? Would you have it in London? Would they combine with a London-based football team that plays in the English football structure in any of the professional divisions? Would they use their training facilities to train? How would that work? Fan base, I've mentioned that. We have 32 teams in the NFL right now. So if you divide 6 million, if that's what they plan to have, or I think 4.4 million is what they got now, by 32, that works out on average for each fan base. Some will differ more than others. So you've got to be aware that you might turn off 31 separate fan bases from that team in London. Plus, mentioning the stadiums and the fact they want a team in London, a lot of British sports fans feel really annoyed that London gets all this attention when we've got a host of other towns and cities that get ignored. And it's not just for sport; it's for funding, it's for infrastructure projects, it's the London centric view of things, and to a certain extent, Manchester in the north of England as well has angered a lot of people from the north of England, where Manchester gets a lot of the TV companies are going building studios there now. The British news media, is based in Manchester partly as well as London. So Manchester and London get a lot of extra infrastructure funding and investment than other cities and towns. And when it comes to sport, same again. Um, so that's left a bit of resentment in some quarters of the country, which feel represented when it comes to international tournaments, bidding for like Commonwealth Games and Olympics. London's had the Olympics, Manchester's had the Commonwealth Games since 2000. So the NFL has to bear that in mind. That constantly going on about London, not everyone can easily access London. Even though I only live 30 odd miles west of London, actually it takes an hour just for me to get to London Waterloo on the line I'm on. London Paddington, I have to go away from London to come back on myself, which takes about a similar amount of time to get to London Paddington, and that's before the underground to get to Wembley. Twickenham is on the Waterloo line, which is the line that I live on, the main line that I live on into London. But White Hart Lane and Wembley, I'd have to get the underground, the bus, and that would cost a fortune. That's even before getting a match day ticket, which is going to be expensive as well. So that's another thing about the logistics. I live near London, and it's actually quite difficult for me to actually get to Wembley and to White Hart Lane. Twickenham is the easiestly accessible stadium, but even then it takes nearly an hour to get there on the train that I would have to get because it's a regular stopping commuter train. So logistics in the UK alone. And then you've got to consider people who don't live in the London metropolitan areas, those who actually live outside the home counties, who may live in the southwest, the Midlands, East Anglia, the north, Scottish fans. If I'm having issues getting to two out of these three stadiums, imagine how they feel trying to get in. There's a lot of disruption on the UK railways at the moment. Driving in London is not advised because the congestion charge that puts people off coming. The congestion itself, the traffic jams on the North Circular where Wembley is you can't move half the time. So logistics here in the UK, let alone from the US, with jet lag and rescheduling the league schedule to give bye weeks, how you would work that out, I have no idea. Also, how competitive will the team be? Because EU employment law doesn't allow a draft system, because we have academy systems and youth clubs and freedom of employment and movement. Now I know that that's going to be possibly changing with Brexit if it does actually happen, and political discussions that the EU and the UK are having right now with the political discourse that we're having. But that also affects tax and visas. We have a high tax rate for high earners. Our visa system, you would have to be classing yourself as resident here. And I'm not sure what free agents and players want to actually change their residency address from, let's say, Orlando, Florida, to Surrey, Guildford, Surrey, and council tax rates as well. We're not just including income tax; we're including council tax. Taxes on VAT on goods, because a lot of these players, like their Dolce and Gabbana and Versace, they're high-end goods. They have VAT attached of 20%. So the tax side of things for the players, people haven't, they've got to consider that as well. What kind of players can they get to come over here? And of course, there's a salary cap system and all that, which goes against EU employment law having a salary cap system and a draft system, unless. So there's issues with the EU employment law affecting tax and visas as well. How competitive can you make a team if you can't get those draft picks because it's against EU law to have a draft system? And what players can you get? How good's that team going to be? Also, the collective bargaining agreement. The travel distances for the away team. That's part of the logistics. There's a lot of issues here. Plus, there's some things I haven't got on the board. When they first came on in 2007, the subprime mortgage crisis and the banking crash and the financial credit crunch, as we should call it, and the issues on the financial markets and the recession we had afterwards hadn't occurred in 2007. There were signs that it was going to happen. We saw Northern Rock, a British bank, collapse that year, but we didn't fully see the full chaos of the banking crisis for another year. So in the last 11 years, a lot has happened economically and politically that also made more issues. The logistics of UK fans alone, let alone the players, as I've just mentioned, is a pain. And the fan base side of things, it's like if an NHL team came in. I'm a Winnipeg Jets fan. There's going to be 32 teams from 2021. If the NHL were going, we're going to relocate a team. We're going to relocate the Florida Panthers to London, and we're going to use the O2 Arena. The O2 Arena's on the other side of London. Logistics fan base, you're going to have a lot of fans automatically turned off. I'm not supporting that team because of the team it has been. I'm not going to change my allegiance. So there is that. And a lot has happened economically as well. All the owners are on watch for a possible UK recession post Brexit, which could very likely happen. There could be an EU-wide recession post Brexit. We don't know what's happening in March next year. There's a lot of unknowns on the political side of things, but these issues are now more exacerbated since 2008. Another thing that's very interesting is the NBA had some games over here at the O2 in London, which is the former Millennium Dome. And the Boston Celtics chief executive officer was interviewed by the BBC and Sky on the topic of having a major league franchise team here in the UK or in Europe. Because obviously the NHL is taking games to Finland and Sweden, has played pre-season games in Belfast before, and has been taking games to Europe and looking at expanding the European regular season games that they play here. And he was asked straight out, is there any chance a major league team from one of the major leagues in the North American franchise system would they ever locate here? And he said in the last decade there's been so much economic and political changes since 2008 that now it's very unlikely. And he had said, if you'd asked me 10, 12 years ago, before we had all this economic uncertainty and political uncertainty, the answer would be more yes. So a lot has happened since the plan was laid out all those years ago to get a team here by 2025 in 2007. And we're not that far out from 2025, but it's still a plan, it's still an aim. It doesn't mean it's gonna happen. And with the issues with White Hart Lane and all these issues here, which are all basically several big issues that are split out into different bits. Logistics of the home fan base alone, and the fan base issue, and then the league scheduling, that's just a whole other kettle of fish. Because I've looked at if London can host a Super Bowl. London can't host a Super Bowl until at least 2023, because every Super Bowl from now until 2022 has been booked. And the likelihood of London, where there's a possibility of it snowing during a Super Bowl, because we saw a lot of snow this winter in February, March, and early April, very unlikely. Again, because of all these issues, the fan base, the logistics, the scheduling, and I think the collective bargaining agreement has something to say about that. But there we go. Will the NFL ever have a team in London? I'm split. I think it's about 50-50. These issues, though, are big, and the NFL has to surmount and have discussions with the players and the team owners about these logistical issues and the issues with the fan base currently here and the risk turning off a lot of fans. There is a risk. Also, the fact that they've aimed for 2025. When they first set that aim out, it seemed achievable, but obviously a lot has happened economically and politically, so will they push that further back? And they have to look at the stadium issue. Wembley is a big, big divisive topic here in the UK. They will be aware of this with people monitoring what British fans feel about Wembley of all sports. Twickenham looks like the safest bet, but then you've got to work out with the rugby union, will that clash with the postseason and the Six Nations, with that clash? White Hart Lane is now a big, big talking point as well, with the delays in that stadium being ready for NFL football. It was meant to host games in September, October. Obviously, that hasn't happened because they haven't finished building it yet. So there's a lot of issues for the NFL to overcome. Also, how do they go about it? Do they relocate a team or expand a team? And I would say the teams that are rumoured to be relocation fodder, Buffalo ain't moving. They just are not a great side. Jacksonville and Tampa, they can't even draw fans where they are. So God knows what they're going to do when they're more than just one-off games in London for the international series. For a whole regular season plus playoffs, if they ever make it that far, how many fans are actually going to want to turn up week on week and watch that team struggle? The competitiveness. And that's before drafts and trading players and free agency. These teams now are shit. Imagine what they're like when you've got to put in the EU employment law, the tax, the visa system. They're going to get worse. So the NFL has to work out with the British and European governments these issues: EU employment law, the visa system, and the tax system. I personally feel they shouldn't have any exemption on tax, because if I've got to pay my taxes in full and I don't get any exemptions, I think they should too. And we'll have to see what the players in the league come to with the collective bargaining agreement. But there we go. Thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe. Place your thoughts below, and I'll have some more videos for you soon.